Welcome back, everyone, to the Weekly Armchair Sports Talk podcast. This is the United Show. This is Devil's Advocate. International break. We're not here to talk about a game. We're not here to review a game. We're actually here to talk transfer window. Now, obviously, look, we're not in the January transfer window. We're not in the summer transfer window. But there's been a lot of discussion on Twitter in the last couple of weeks in regards to Manchester United striker position, Manchester United number 9. Obviously, we've had our struggles this season with Martial's injuries and Phil Weghorst, shooting blanks almost, doing everything else but scoring. So yeah, obviously, look, the striker position is up for debate, and also, with the takeover happening, with the influx of money that may be getting pumped into the club, you'd like to think Manchester United would be in the market for a striker. So obviously, I have Julio and Jonathan joining me here today. So yeah, obviously, look, we're going to chat all things United. We're going to chat about different types of strikers who may or may not suit Erik Ten Hag's system. We're also going to chat about, obviously, I suppose the biggest topics that's been coming around, especially the two main players been linked to us at the moment, Harry Kane, Victor Osimhen, and it's causing a lot of, I suppose, division already, even before we get to the window. So I wonder who the lads prefer, and even look, there's 4 players in the thumbnail. It may be a case the lads may bring someone up out of left field. So again, look, this is where the type of discussion we'll be having tonight. So do smash the video, do subscribe as always, and look, we do appreciate your support. Julio, first of all, I'm not going to ask you just any questions about games or anything, but I suppose the hottest topic at the minute is Victor Osimhen. He's obviously been red hot in Europe this season. He's been banging goals in the Champions League. He's banging goals in Serie A. Napoli are top of Serie A at the minute. And he seems to be kind of this real bully, real strong, powerful, direct number 9. And he seems to be someone who's been very highly thought of in this last 12 months. Now, personally, I actually didn't hear of him until this season. I genuinely didn't know of him. But it seems like this year he's really tearing up trees for Napoli. First of all, obviously, look, it's looking like the fee touted for him right now is £150 million. When you consider 6 months ago, people were talking about 70 million plus Ronaldo for him. When you consider Ronaldo's age and market value at the time, that's not a lot, really. But when you look at the strengths of Victor Osimhen, first of all, do you think he'd be a striker that can fit into Erik Ten Hag's system, first of all? And also, when you look at, obviously, his framework and his kind of rise onto the scene, would Manchester United be taking a massive, massive risk at 150 million if Victor Osimhen was that target? Or has he shown you enough in this last kind of 7-8 months that he could come in and really, make a mark on the Premier League?
For the money, it's always a risk. £150 million for someone who has scored goals in Serie A. Who, to be fair, I was on last week with Jonathan and Greg and Jamie, and I wasn't that convinced by him. But when I've gone and looked back at his goal record isn't as bad as I thought it was. He's not shy from a big transfer. Napoli bought him from Lille for £72 million. Now, as you can imagine, that will have been an installments process. But even then, I saw the price. I remember seeing back then the price tag and thinking that's a lot of money for someone who's only scored in Ligue 1. But since he's been at Napoli, his goal scoring's been 10 goals, then 18, and then he's currently on 25 in all competitions for Napoli, not including international or anything else. He's 24 years old. So he's at a really good age now. And I think it could well be a case where people will look at it and think if we took a punt on him last summer, it might have been a risk, given he'd had one really good double-digit season. Now he's probably got 2 under his belt. You could probably say maybe it's less of a risk. He's a very dynamic striker, which is what I like about him, which is what a lot of people like about him, which is really good because I think that would work with the players we currently got at our disposal. But he's not Premier League proven. And for £150 million, regardless whether it's one big upfront fee or it's in installments, yes, you can look at it in a business sense that it's an investment and you're paying over time, so it's not that bad, maybe. But it's still a huge risk because I said last week, and Jonathan might remember, I said I can see a scenario where we pay that money, Osimhen comes in and only gets 6 goals next season. Do you mean that's just the worry for me? And having a big transfer to Napoli is one thing, but having a big money transfer for double the price to United with the kind of pressure that comes for playing for Man United, I don't know. It could. I'm not saying his weak mentality could make him, could break him. I'm not, but there's a lot of risks, including the fact that it's so expensive. Now, as much as I like, put it this way, what he brings to the table, his attributes, I really like. And obviously, if I was to sit there and if I could tell the future and the future says to me, oh, he's going to be guaranteed success, then obviously I'd go and get him. Because what he brings to the table, we don't really have, and we haven't really had. So it's not my preferred choice, only because of the money being quoted, and for a little bit less, we can get more. Like in terms of value for money, we could easily get, I think, maybe 2 players for maybe just a little bit less. So for me personally, there's a lot of risk that comes with it.
Yeah, look, he's someone, from what I've watched this season, very powerful. Like he's strong in the ball. He really shrugs players off, and like he doesn't seem phased. And that's playing for Napoli. No disrespect to Napoli, they're one of the best teams in the world this season. And for me, I think they could, looking at their road to the Champions League, they very well could win it. But I think at the moment, the thing about it is, I'd like to see him maybe do for me, for 150 million, he'd have to do it for one more season for me, to justify paying it.
Same numbers.
Yeah, and they're like the same numbers he's pulling up now. If he pulled them up again next season, I'd be like, right. He hasn't done it for long enough for me to really go in and justify it. Like, and I'm not comparing him to Romelu Lukaku, right? But Lukaku done that in Serie A. Similar type style player. Obviously big, strong, direct, very good finisher. But in build-up, isn't that great. And I think Victor Osimhen, where he's very good from a finishing point of view and he's very strong, I think in the build-up, he might struggle in United's team. Now this is my personal opinion, just from what I've seen of him. But I think 150 million, like, look, there's just 2 ways of looking at it. If he comes in and he scores goals and he does great, you've a striker for the next 10 years. Now 150 million is very well invested. It is. But if he struggles, similar to look when Chelsea brought Lukaku back, they paid 100 million for Lukaku. And look, for all intents and purposes, Chelsea needed Lukaku. They needed a striker to put away chances, because Chelsea were creating a lot of chances and not putting into the back of the net. It didn't work out. I'd say now, if Chelsea were looking back now, they probably would have went in and maybe invest that in João Felix, who they have right now. So like I think there's a risk. I think a very massive risk, because if this was for like 70 or 80, I'd be like, yeah, no bother, go in and get him. Because look, we paid fucking 90 million for Anthony. Look, we got our pants pulled down. But like, Joe, you look at Osimhen's quality compared to Anthony's, you can understand why we're going in for that much. We were desperate for it at the time, and that's why we bought Anthony for that much. But I think just at 150 million, we'd be leaving ourselves, because even look, let's say if Qatar come in, I know we're probably like comments about ownership are going to come in because the deadline's in 2 hours' time. I guarantee someone's going to ask a question. But let's say if Qatar come in, we're not going to go out and splash out massive money in the summer because of FFP, with the debt and stuff like that. They're like, you'd imagine with player sales are going to play a massive part in the summer. So I'd say our summer budget is probably going to be north of 200 million. And then you're counting on selling your Donny van de Beeks, your Harry Maguires of the world before you spend over that. And look, that's just me saying that's I'm projecting that based off if we qualify for the Champions League and finish third in the Premier League and other revenue streams coming in. If we qualify for the Champions League, our Adidas deal doesn't go. If we don't qualify for the Champions League, we're in big trouble. Big trouble in the summer. I'm telling you that now. But I think just with 150 million, I think for me, it's too much of a risk, because we've seen strikers come from Bundesliga, come from Serie A for big money. You can even go back to Andrei Shevchenko years ago. coming from Serie A just after winning the Ballon d'Or. Or was the Ballon d'Or or European Player of the Year, something like that. And he struggled. We brought Falcao in, he struggled. Now, albeit Falcao was finished when he came. We didn't know he was finished, but when he came, we quickly found out he was finished. So I think there is massive risk. Now, look, I could be completely wrong. I know Reese has been fighting me with the last 2 weeks about this particular transfer. But for me, I just look at £150 million and I think look, the potential is there. And if he does well, you have a striker for 10 years. I just think with Victor Osimhen right now, is the risk going to be worth enough for the reward? And unfortunately, right now, I'm unsure right now. Because me personally, I've seen a good bit of him, but I haven't seen enough of him to say 150 million we should pay that. But Julio, you wanted to come back in just on that point.
Yeah, it's we've seen the similar sort of price touted for their Georgian winger, whose name I'm not even going to bother pronouncing. Yeah. I don't mean disrespect to him. I think he's quality, but I don't want to butcher his name.
Yeah, of course.
Out of respect. But we're seeing this a lot now. Napoli have seen this, and if they paid £50 million for him, maybe instead of 70, we might be being quoted 100. Do you know what I mean? It could be, It could be based on like some maths in their heads where it's like, hang on, we paid this much, so we could ask for this much. But I think nowadays clubs are seeing, oh, he's good. This player is good. We're playing a bit at a high level than we normally do, because no one had Napoli to win Serie A at the start of the season. Let's be honest. So it's almost a case of you'll find this with clubs like West Ham with Declan Rice. They're seeing an opportunity where they can say, we value him at this amount of money. He may not be worth that much money. He may not be that good. He may just be having a really good season of form, for example. But clubs are taking opportunities now they're almost taking advantage of it, and they taking it and saying, well, hang on, we got an opportunity to just make some money here. It's either we keep him or we get a bucket load and rebuild. And the comment that's just come through there is, I'd love to do a lot more research on football finance so I can properly back this up. But yeah, it's a case of just, you see this a lot nowadays. A player almost breaks through. I mean, I may have heard of Osimhen before, but like you said, you've only heard of him properly this season.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit people like other channels do and say I've watched Osimhen for 3 or 4 years and he's a sure thing. I'm going to say it how I say it, and I haven't seen I've seen a lot of them say he could be a brilliant Manchester United striker, but he could be in the key word.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Lukaku 100 million made a lot more sense than Osimhen for 150 million.
Yeah, 100%.
Obviously, it didn't turn out that way, but on paper,
it did. Because he was Premier League proven. He had one of the best goals to game ratio rates in the world at the time.
Yeah.
And Chelsea needed a gilt-edged finisher.
Yeah. So, I don't know. For me personally, I don't know what Jonathan thinks, but for me personally, I think for the money being touted, I think Osimhen's maybe steer clear. Quality player, but just for the money he needs to prove it a bit more. Like you said, Keane.
100%. Jonathan, do you want to come in on Osimhen? Do you have a different opinion to us with regards to this? Because, look, many of our fans do want him to come in.
Yeah, when I was on the show last week, Keane, I think a question came into the comments and it was literally Kane or Osimhen. So we kind of just slightly touched on it. And I was saying to the lads, I'm fully on the Victor Osimhen train. I think he's an absolute beast of a striker. He reminds me of a quicker version of Didier Drogba in his prime. But coming onto the show tonight, I decided to look into a bit more, do a bit more research and stuff. And, when you actually break it down a bit more, you can see that there's risk involved in both the Kane and the Osimhen transfers for different reasons. You guys touched on it there, the €150 million valuation put on Victor Osimhen there today by Napoli. We're not in a position as a club at the moment that we can afford to just drop 150 million on one player. If we were 3 years down the line under Ten Hag and we had the bones of a team there and we were literally just lacking that striker, similar to City last year, just before they signed Haaland, there was such a good balanced team. Everyone was just saying all they need is a striker, and it's proven worked out with the goals that Haaland is banging in. So if we were another 2 or 3 years down the line, you could look at the 150 million euro transfer fee and say, right, it is what it is, but at 24 years of age, we can break that down over the next 8 to 10 years and it works out economically over that period of time. Kane, I think, is a risk for different reasons. He's going to come with the English premium price tag. He only has a year left on his contract in the summer, but that's not going to matter to hell to Daniel Levy, who is notoriously bad for negotiating with Man United. He's going to cost United easily 100 million in the summer. And that's a risk for a different reason, because again, you're dropping 100 million on one player, which we need to avoid if possible. There's always going to be a United premium on players, but we need to avoid paying that sort of money on one striker if we can avoid it in the summer, because I still think we need 2 to 3 players in other positions as well. And Kane is a risk because of his injury record. You know, there's periods of the season where Kane just kind of disappears with these muscular injuries. And I think we touched on this in the show a few weeks ago.
To counter in that, Jonathan, in the last 2 or 3 years, that hasn't been the case, though. He hasn't, like, previous to that, with like the ankle injuries and the muscle injuries, I think maybe pre-pandemic, he's had that. But since COVID, since then, with the 5 subs and other things, that injury record has actually lessened.
Yeah, you're probably right. His injury record has improved over the last few years. But just when players turn 30, which he is in the summer, these injuries that he may sustain, he may truck on for the next 3 years completely injury free. And if we sign him, he could score 100 goals for us over the next 3 seasons. But if he does start picking up niggly little injuries that players tend to get over 30, we saw it with Robin van Persie. His first season at United, he was absolutely flawless. Then the next 2 years before he departed, he started picking up these niggling little injuries where he's missing 12 to 14 games at a time. And that would just be a slight concern for me with Harry Kane. Just the same thing happens when you hit that 30 mark. These injuries tend to take a little bit more of a toll on the body. But look, it's, as we said, it's all circumstance at this point. You know what I mean? It's the risks, but look, only time will tell how much they are or they aren't.
Yeah, and look for me, I'll be honest with this with the Harry Kane one. For me, I look at the way he's adapted his game over the last 2 or 3 years. He's dramatically changed his playing style, where he drops into midfield and he's picking passes, and he's not like as physical as he was a couple of years ago. Before that, where he'd be getting up against defenders and going into challenges. He seems to be a lot more streetwise with the way he plays the game. And I look at it and I think, like, look, with Erik Ten Hag, I think he'd have a manager who could definitely manage him well. In that case, look, I'll be honest with this. Like, I look at his playing style and I think he's someone who can. He's definitely someone who can change our team overnight, like 100%. You look how the United's chance creation this season, right? Let's just say, for example, you look at the output that Bruno Fernandes has given us from a creative standpoint, and Wout Weghorst is not putting these chances away. You put Harry Kane in them positions, he's getting you 20 to 25 goals in the league alone. You look what Harry Kane is doing off scraps. Like, you look what he's doing on scraps at Spurs. Spurs create fuck all. Since Bentancur got injured, they're creating sweet fuck all. And I'm going to say it because, like, look, at the end of the day, look, I don't care. Like, Spurs are like, Harry Kane is carrying them right now. He is, like, 100%. You get Kane in with quality players, he's going to score even more goals. Like, you get him in with the Casemiros, the Brunos, even like, you look at other players, potentially coming in, maybe a potentially like Frankie de Jong or Jude Bellingham, whoever that may be in midfield. We're going to buy a top midfielder this summer. That's an absolute fact. There's no way in hell we're going into next season without a top class midfielder, considering new ownership coming in, like, again, and player sales. I dare to say that we're going to have someone in there beside Casemiro Fernandes who's going to help us in the transition. So, like, I think Harry Kane can definitely contribute. And I also look at, like, if you put Victor Osimhen in Man United's team compared to Harry Kane in Man United's team, tactically, you get a much better Marcus Rashford if Harry Kane's in his team. Because Victor Osimhen, everything's going to have to go through him. All him, like, he's a flat track bully. He get into the box to score goals. Harry Kane drops deep. He links up play. The likes of Bruno come running from like a number 10 position, making space for him. making space for Marcus Rashford, Joe out wide, even Anthony to some extent as well. He'd be able to bring him into the game and get him into goal scoring positions. I look at him tactically and I look at, Evan, fuck off, honestly. With all due respect, I think Harry Kane could definitely do a lot more at Man United than he's doing at Tottenham right now. And the quality around him is much better. Evan's piping up. Chelsea are intent, level on points with Villa, who are only for goal difference, Evan, you'd be in the bottom half of the table. You need to humble yourself. Honest to God, you need to humble yourself. 100%, you need to humble yourself. Really, you spent 600 million and you're barely 10th place. Shut the fuck up. But anyway, look, Harry Kane, I think, obviously the injuries, they are there. He got them in the past, but when you actually look at his last 2 or 3 years, the injury record is he's missed less games. But like you said, Jonathan, you made a fair point. Like in terms of after 30, his body could weaken. But again, it kind of brings us back to that point of you pay 100 million for Kane, you have 50 million left, let's say, or whatever how much million you have left. You could buy a younger striker as well. I
know where this is going.
But in this case, like with Harry Kane, I think you get a sure 20 to 25 goals in the league. He does what it says on the tin. He's done it in the Premier League. Now, there is comparisons to him and Robin Van Persie, but Van Persie, for a good while, wasn't actually Arsenal's striker. He's playing out left wing and stuff like that. And that's where he's picking up injuries when he was younger. So, look, there's definitely pros and cons to getting Kane. I just feel like people say he isn't a winner. And look, that's true. He hasn't won a trophy in his career. Will you put him in the dressing room alongside Rafael Varane, alongside Casemiro, alongside, players like that, Lisandro Martinez, players like that who've won trophies, they've been in big finals. Harry Kane has not, in his club career, has not been around that. Harry Kane's been the best player in the dressing room that's won fuck all. Yes, he's been there Hugo Lloris has won a World Cup, but at the end of the day, he's never been in the dressing room full of winners. He's never gone over that extra mile. And if he gets in there with dressing room winners, same with Van Persie. Van Persie won barely anything at Arsenal. And I was watching a video today where Van Persie said the difference going from Arsenal to Man United was astronomical. Now, this is obviously a different Man United to what the Man United dressing room the Van Persie came into. But he's in there with trophy winners. This team is on the up. Tottenham are on the decline. Conte's leaving. Pochettino's coming back in. What's going to change? Let's say if he comes in. Let's say Ryan Mason gets the fucking job. Right? Even if they get Tuchel in. Let's say if Tottenham get Tuchel in. Will he be given the funds to propel Tottenham into a title challenging team? Because at the end of the day, does Harry Kane want to stay at Tottenham and potentially win a Carabao Cup? Right? I know that's what we just won, right? But with new ownership, you dare to say United are going to be back up, at least fighting for a title. Not win the title, but actually challenging for one. You'd like to think that. Spurs need a lot more players than we do in the rebuild. Erik Ten Hag is going to be, in my opinion, let's say if they don't get Tuchel and they get whoever Tottenham get in as manager right now, barring the exception of Thomas Tuchel, Erik Ten Hag's a better manager. Erik Ten Hag's a better manager than what they'll get. And he's a brilliant coach and he improves players. So I do think Evan, he's getting this at Spurs and all comps. What you're talking about. You'd be at the end of the day, I think Harry Kane, if he wants to really break Alan Shearer's record and he wants to deal with legacy, he needs to sign for Manchester United. Because you break Alan Shearer's record and you do it winning the league, he'll be remembered. If he breaks Alan Shearer's record but wins fuck all at Tottenham, what's he going to say to his kids? I scored a heap of goals, what trophies I win? I think that, and that's the difference. If he wants to have a legacy and he wants to go down as one of the greatest Premier League strikers at all time, he needs to leave. At the end of the day, you should have seen a Man City last year. He should have left. He should have sacked his brother, who was his agent, for signing that 6-year deal at Spurs
with no release clause, no gal, nothing.
Yeah. Absolute fucking see.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing with Kane is, there's a thing where you think, is Kane that much of a winner in the essence that because other players would have sacked off their agent, regardless of who it was, brought in someone else, someone who can get the move, like Mino Raiola, God rest his soul, and he would have easily got that move. So, but it could be a case of this summer where Kane's finally had enough. Because the problem last time, I said last week or the week before, I can't remember when, was that like the problem is that like I've lost the words. God damn it. I've lost the words for it. Look, the thing with Kane is he was priced out of a move. Daniel Levy turns and was like, okay, we want 150 million for Kane to City. City realistically are going to sit there and be like, well, we've got money, but we're not going to pay 150 million pounds for him. Even if they didn't get Jack Grealish that summer, they still wouldn't have paid that much for Kane. My thing with Kane is, I read or heard somewhere this week, I can't remember where, when Van Persie came to United, because he always had those injury problems, so a similar age and all that. But I think the 1 year he had with Ferguson, I think Ferguson managed his injuries carefully. In fact, I think Patrice Evra said it on Rio Ferdinand's podcast on Monday.
Yeah.
Van Persie came in and Sir Alex turned to them all and said, he's the only one we're trying to be careful with injuries and stuff. Because usually they like train through injuries and stuff.
Wise came in and ran him into the ground, sure, when Wise came in.
Yeah. So, do you know what I mean? It's a case where it could be, it depends really. It depends how Ten Hag manages the injury, because Kane's injury record pre-pandemic, 4 years in a row, March, give or take, March, April, February, whatever, for about 6 weeks, he'd be out with some kind of muscular problem or ankle problem or something. Then post-pandemic, it's not been like that. Now, obviously, given his age, his body might weaken even more. But if Ten Hag turned around and said, Kane's the one I want, then I'm immediately going to think, right, Ten Hag's got a plan for him. Ten Hag's got a plan for him how to manage that, and he's got to keep an eye on him. He said, right, this is what I want you to do. Maybe less of this, maybe less of that. The only other worry I have with Kane would be there's an argument somewhere about maybe the fact that, this might sound ridiculous, but his link-up play, about how he drops in too deep. I don't know, it's almost like he fills into Bruno's role and Bruno's there like, what else do I do?
You remember Bruno with Cavani, and Cavani used to do that. Bruno used to make them runs.
But that's Bruno, the thing. That's my counterpoint.
Weaponized that way.
When Bruno's role under Solskjaer was more of a second striker, which obviously he went and got, 28 goals and a lot of assists in that full-on COVID season when he had Cavani with him. So it's almost like unlocking second striker Bruno again will get his numbers up even more. Not to mention the fact that Dele Alli's prime years were as a second striker with Kane. It's no coincidence that Dele Alli, when he's not been a second striker, and he's had a massive drop-off regardless. I don't know what's going on with him. But when his best years were as almost like a second striker with Kane as the main guy. So I think we've seen with England where Kane and Rashford together work. At least at the World Cup, I saw it. So I feel like what your point about Kane coming in and almost not unlocking everyone around him, but he'll make everyone around him better. Kane could easily get only 15 goals for the season, for example, in his first season. But I think his assist numbers would be just as high, if not higher. And then you'd see Rashford's input be increased. You'd see Bruno Fernandes' input increased. Maybe whoever's on the right wing next year is increased.
I think Anthony could help Anthony as well with the link-up play.
Yeah.
As well, like him dropping in, occupying space, Anthony making it. Look, I know everyone calls him a one-trick pony, and look, it's kind of a true statement. But him dropping in and occupying space, occupying them defenders, dragging them in field, will make space for the likes of Anthony to run inside and have that space to take that shot with his left foot. So, look, I think there's a lot of balance that Kane can bring to the team. Obviously, look, the injury record is there. But I think his experience in the Premier League is invaluable. And again, like with Van Persie, Van Persie came into a team that had winners in it. Man United have a team of winners now, with the likes of Varane's, Casemiro's, Lisandro Martinez. Evan slagged off Bruno, but Bruno is a winner. Bruno is a leader, and anyone who says he isn't, like, they're just they just hate him because he plays for Man United. He is. So, like, I think with Harry Kane, he's the one for me who I think can come in.
Guaranteed.
He's a sure thing. I think Harry Kane is a sure thing. And Gary Neville said it 2 years ago before we signed Ronaldo. He said, we won't win the league if we sign Ronaldo, but we'd win the league if we sign Kane. And at the time, I was thinking, that's a bit of a daft statement. But when you actually break it down and you look at the type of player he is, he can elevate others around him. And also, like, look, he's a top player. Sean asked, what's the price? I think, look, Daniel Levy will look for 100 million.
He won't get it.
He won't get it.
If Kane pushes hard enough, it will go down to about maybe 70, 75. Give or take.
80 million.
Yeah. And leaves more money in the budget almost for maybe another striker. Because it looks like 2 strikers are leaving this summer. Martial and then Weghorst's loan expires. Now, whether we somehow make that loan permanent or we get Evan Ferguson as an understudy, I think would be really good value for money in comparison to Osimhen, especially Evan Ferguson. If you have Evan Ferguson as a backup to Harry Kane, because I was saying on another show where some younger players, their path into the first team are planned. I was saying this with Pellistri. I think if you get Ferguson in as an understudy to Kane, it almost like Ten Hag could maybe mold him into his vision. And also, it's not like a few years ago when Oli first got the job and he had his first summer and we lost Lukaku, and it was almost a case of, we've got younger players coming through, let's throw them into the first team maybe, or let's plan their approach a bit. It's almost like it's careful with Ferguson, which is what youngsters need, I think, because Elanga last season, he was thrown in and now he looks like he's one leg out the door.
Yeah. And look, I think with that, like, especially look, Ollie's first full season, he trialed Rashford as a striker, he trialed Martial as a striker, he trialed someone else as a striker. And look, it worked. It worked to some extent, but again, we didn't have the midfield behind him to fully work. And I think now, look, we have the full midfield. We need a fluid front three. I think, look, you mentioned Evan Ferguson. I think starting at Man United next season, no. As a full-time United's number 1, number 9, no. What I will say about Evan Ferguson is he has a lot of attributes similar to what a young Wayne Rooney had in terms of pace, power, bringing players into play, his movement, his strength. He has a lot of that. Now, obviously, with Evan Ferguson, I think if you bring Harry Kane in, I think Harry Kane's the perfect striker to mold them under. Because Harry Kane is vastly experienced. Harry Kane is, like, in my opinion, the best striker in England. You can argue Erling Haaland, but I think he's the most complete striker in England. Yeah, Haaland's a good 6-yard box, 18-yard box goal scorer. Harry Kane is the complete package. I think Harry Kane's a better player than Haaland. And look, I just look at his overall game. I think Harry Kane, if you have to bring in someone else alongside Harry Kane, I think Evan Ferguson is that perfect player. And I'm watching him since he was 15, 16 when he was in the Bows team. And like he's scoring at League of Ireland level at that age. People might laugh, say that's the League of Ireland, but at that age, that's a tough thing to do. Yeah. Like Jack Doherty, who's a good friend of mine, comes on this podcast who's currently playing in League of Ireland, and he'd tell you that it's a tough league. Like, it is a tough league. And when you look at the way he's scoring goals in this RB team in Brighton, he's playing very, very well. Like, he's scoring against teams like Arsenal and Liverpool. I think he's a very good player. Again, for me with Evan Ferguson, I think he has the talent in abundance. I think he just needs to be molded under a good coach. And I think Erik Ten Hag could do that. I think playing alongside Harry Kane, he could do that. Like, again, people mention Harry Kane injury record. If you have Evan Ferguson in there, in the squad, alongside Harry Kane, for about 10 games, even you can play Ferguson all the cup games. You can play Ferguson, if Harry Kane, if we're winning a game and Harry Kane's getting a bit tired, bring him on. Obviously, there's going to be a point in the season where, like, look, there's 5 substitutes. If Man United are competing in every competition, which I dare to say we probably will be, we'll at least get far in most of them. there's going to be fixture congestion. There's going to be a case when we're playing games every 3 days like it is this year. I think Ferguson will be that player to mould under him.
I don't think Ferguson will move this summer, though.
Not this summer.
I think
another year at least.
Yeah, I think Brighton will do what they did with Caicedo, and they'll protect his market value. He'll sign a new long-term contract in the summer, and if he continues his development then at the rate he's doing at the minute, next summer he's going to be worth easily about 40 to 50 million easily. Like, Brighton are so smart business-wise. And I think, to be fair to Ferguson as well, I see what you're saying, Keane. If we do sign Kane this summer, he would be a perfect under for him in terms of moulding his all-around game. But I think another season at Brighton will do him the world of good, and especially if they keep hold of De Zerbi as well for another season, because he's going to be poached as a manager as well. He's too good to stay at Brighton long-term as well. But Ferguson definitely needs another season of playing proper football week in, week out in the Premier League if possible, and then you're going to see how high his ceiling is, because if he does continue on the trajectory he's on now, he could be one of Ireland's greatest ever players, which we don't say too often. And, he could be one of the Premier League's best ever players if he does keep going the way he's going.
Yeah, look, he does have, like, the moment he does have high potential. I do see a case where, like, look, you can maybe get him to stay at Brighton for another year and maybe they protect his market value. My only concern with that is we're probably going in for about 50 or 60 million. Whereas this summer, you could probably get him from under for about 25 to 30. I think that's where, but again, look, let's say for all intents and purposes, Qatar come in, money is not going to be an object next summer. No, not this summer. I'm on the summer after. Money is not going to be an object. And look, this is not me promoting a sports washing project. This is just me saying and how it is if they're in, and money won't be an object. But look, I think it's one of them where I think Ferguson is someone who I think if you're bringing in two players, I think he could be ideal. As well as that, like, look, to be fair, there's other number two strikers you can go out and get. Let's say you go out and get like a Moussa Dembele or someone like that to play as a backup striker. You can have that. There's someone of that mold. Maybe even Vlahovic right now. Juventus are fucked. Let's be honest. Financially and on the pitch, Juventus are absolutely bollocksed. So, like, with their financials, can you get Vlahovic for about 50 million and get Harry Kane for 100?
He's one of the cheaper options.
Sorry?
Vlahovic is one of the cheaper options. You might get him for the similar price to what they paid for him, which was about 70, maybe a bit less because they might be desperate to sell. So
that's why I have him in the thumbnail, because I think with Vlahovic, I think he's someone who is not being talked about right now. But I think, like, when you look at, like, Juve right now, they're not going to win the league. And, when you look at, like, Champions League qualification right now, it's up in the air for Juve right now. And, like, when you look at that, like, Vlahovic, a player of his quality and his caliber, he's not going to be wanting to play in the Europa League. Like, let's be completely honest. He's not going to be wanting to play in the Europa League. He's one of the most sought-out strikers in Europe right now. Juventus are 7th place right now, and they're 7 points off AC Milan in 4th. And with the way they're playing, I just don't see Vlahovic staying there. And if United want to be shrewd in the market, which we have been since Ten Hag's come in, I think Vlahovic could be a sign that it could be a very shrewd one. And like Julio said, you can get him in for 60, 70 million, maybe even 50. Because, like, when you look at Juve, they're going to have to sell. And like, with their financial situation, they're not going to be sitting there. They're not in the prime position, to make demands. This is the fee, take it or leave it. And the longer they can't afford to go into a transfer saga. Similarly, like, they're looking to get Paul Pogba off the books for fuck all in the summer. And they could get a transfer fee for him, but his injury record, that's not going to happen. You look at players like Adrian Rabiot, he's going to go for fuck all this summer. Now, we're going to talk about midfield options. I think we might be talking about him on another show. But I look at Juve right now and their financial crisis. I think United under new ownership should definitely look at him and maybe look at poaching one or two players. Definitely a squad. Especially, like, look, let's say for all intents and purposes, FFP fucks us this summer. And
because we're United,
where we can spend X amount. And let's say we can't get certain players out of the club. Then Vlahovic could be a smart signing, for the price that he could be. And even at that, there's other strikers out there, who can come in and do a job, even as number 2 strikers, So I do think, look, obviously Ferguson's the one who's been sought after by the fan base. I think, look, I think he has a high enough ceiling that he'd come in as a number 2 as an understudy. But I do understand that maybe another 12 months at Brighton could be a good thing for him. But one thing I will say is, if Spurs do sell Harry Kane, Evan Ferguson's a fucking Spurs type signing in terms of young player. Bring him in and then sell him on for a big fee. I could actually see that happening. If Spurs did get rid of Kane. But Jonathan, you wanted to come in on something there with regards to kind of a backup striker.
Yeah, just talking about number 2 strikers and strikers that might be happy to come in there and just kind of play that squad role. Just doing a bit of research across strikers in Europe across this season. Paulo Dybala has a release clause in the summer for 12 million euros, and he plays quite similarly to Kane as well. Now, look, I'm not comparing to Harry Kane. He's a completely different player, not half the player Kane is. But in terms of that sort of false 9 type player that could drop deep and bring others in around him. Now, I kind of thought, God, we haven't heard much about him. He mustn't have done too well at Roma, but I was looking at his figures, and he scored 15 goals last season. He's 13 goals already this season. Now, I'm not too sure what his assist stats are like, but they're decent numbers, albeit for Serie A, but they're decent numbers for a player if you're going to bring him in as a number 2. And I know that at Roma, he's kind of played more on the right-hand side, kind of cutting on the left. At United, he might be playing more centrally, so those stats could be even better. So, a 12 million euros for an established Argentine international, he could be worth a punt in the summer if them FFP restrictions come down hard on United.
Yeah, it could be, again, it could be one of them signings where, look, I'll be honest, in 2019 when Paulo Dybala was linked to us, I was on that train. Unfortunately, it didn't arrive. It was like the train service in England that was cancelled. My English friends now will be giving me shit now later, but look, I think for me, he's definitely, if you're looking at an Erik Ten Hag system and dropping in deep and creating them chances, I think he'd be a lot more productive than what Weghorst is doing. Now, that's not diminishing Weghorst's, let's say, overall play for us. He's good. Look, he's not finishing his chances right now. And again, it was Trevor or someone else in the comments is coming at me every week saying Weghorst is crap. He's not a crap player. He's just not good enough to start number 9 for Man United every week. And I think I've said that since the minute he came in. He's a stopgap. And I don't I'd be worried under new ownership next season if Weghorst is starting every week. I really, really would, but it's not going to happen. I think when you look at Paulo Dybala, he's someone who could do that Weghorst role with a bit more quality. Our attacks will be a lot quicker. Julio, you wanted to come in there and something as well?
Yeah, one thing on Dybala is we know how that song and dance goes. This isn't the first time we've been linked with him.
Yeah.
But he's 29 years old. He's not exactly the young forward we thought he was. And to be honest, I think his main problem in Serie A over the last 5 years has been that he's to accommodate for other players, he's played out of position. I think his best role is more centrally, but I think a lot of the time he's played on the right wing. So it's almost like we've not been getting the best out. Well, Serie A clubs have not been getting the best out of him. So I feel like for £11 million, it's not a bad punt to take as a number 2. And I think he'd do all right here. On a quick one on Evan Ferguson, I think one reason we all love him, it screams of a Sir Alex kind of signing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. It just screams of a Sir Alex Ferguson kind of signing where he's gone. It's like, right, I'm going to give you another year, but then you're coming to me and you're coming to play for me. And so I think it's almost like a subconscious nostalgia thing that maybe some don't even realize. But I'm all for the player regardless of that because I think he will be a quality striker. But yeah, the one problem I've got with Vlahovic is last 2 seasons, he's had very good seasons for Fiorentina and Juventus. This season, he's only played 28 games and he's only got 11 goals, which I know isn't bad for a striker, but he's in Serie A and he's supposed to be Juventus' first choice. And I think he's missed about 11 games this season through injury, totaling about 50, 60 days or something with injury, which for me, just off the eye, just looking there, I don't like, but he offers also something different. Do you know what I mean? To Kane and to Osimhen, he's a big lad. Do you know what I mean? He's a bit different. Maybe he's more of a Halle type striker, like Ten Hag had at Ajax before. So the good thing about Ten Hag is, I think he's willing to work with anyone and everyone. I think you give him a player and he'll find a way to put him in his team, a quality player. Obviously, some might not work out like others. Like we've already lost a player this midway through the season because it wasn't working with Ten Hag. Given that obviously he went and gave an interview to a certain journalist with his own talk show.
And to be fair, just to touch on that, like Ronaldo actually like had a bit of self-reflection today in an interview for Portugal, and basically regrets going on that interview with Piers Morgan and saying like, look, it's kind of water under the bridge now type of thing. But yeah, like
hindsight's a wonderful thing though. Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Wonderful thing when he sees his winning trophies and back on the up now. And he's over in Saudi Arabia.
On Rabiot, I know we're talking about strikers, but there's a report coming out today that firstly, Sabitzer wants to make his deal permanent. Romano said this earlier, apparently, that, you know, Sabitzer wants to continue, which is a good sign, but obviously we'll need a good number 8 to start ahead of him. And apparently Rabiot's come out and said that he's a Liverpool fan.
Yeah, so was Velvekhorst, didn't he? But look.
No, but that one didn't get as much coverage.
Wasn't Jamie Carragher an Everton fan? He was starting every week for Liverpool.
Yeah, this isn't about Jamie Carragher. This is about Rabiot.
Yeah. You know what I mean, though. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
One of our best ever strikers is a fucking Scouser. Like, look, come on, like. You know, at the end of the day, I think gone are the days where like this player's a staunch fan, he won't sign for club. It's all about money at the end of the day. And like
Sterling.
Sorry?
Raheem Sterling played for our two biggest
he played for City and Liverpool and now Chelsea. Like, so like look, at the end of the day, I think who you support kind of means nothing in this this day and age. Like Trevor, if you listen to what I said, I was basically champion Harry Kane for about 15 or 20 minutes. Yeah.
One thing is, I think whatever happens with the ownership for the summer will really tell the story of what's going to happen this summer. I think whoever gets the ownership, whether it's, I pray this doesn't happen, but whether it's the Glazers stay, whether it's Jim Ratcliffe, or whether the Qataris or someone else comes in, it will all be a different story for each, I think, regarding our summer spend. I think the way we go into the window will be differently, regardless of what happens with new ownership in terms of who gets it. The board will change, I think, or at least it will in the next year.
I think, with that, Julio, I think, like, look, I think there's going to be, I don't think there's going to be a dramatic change straight away, but I do think, I look at the likes of Richard Arnold, John Murtaugh, I think their time is going to be up the minute that, like, I dare to say they'll come in for the first bedding in period, but the Qataris are on about bringing in the best in class. So I dare say Murtaugh, Fletcher. Well, to be fair, Darren Fletcher, because he's a former person in the club, I think he might survive it all. I think John Murtaugh, Richard Arnold, you know, any of the rest, Matt Judge is already gone, Woodward's gone, but the likes of them are going to be gone. And there'll be new people for recruitment coming in. But I do think with the Qataris, they'll pay off the transfer debt, which actually could help us. As part of this takeover, I think that could help us in terms of FFP money owed and stuff. I do think player sales are going to play a massive, massive part this summer in terms of, you know, players coming in. Like, if we can get decent money for the likes of Donny van de Beek and Harry Maguire, that could be north of 80 million. You know, we're not going to get 80 million for Harry Maguire, but I'm saying we sell Maguire for 40, English tax, England international being selling for that. Donny van de Beek probably for about 30. Just he's living off his Ajax highlights. You know, we could get good money for him. Not to mention Axel Tuanzebe is probably going to go for about 15. You know, he's playing well with Stoke. Stoke want him on a permanent. I say maybe 10 to 15 million on him. Then you're probably looking at Martial leaving, his wages off. Scott McTominay. Do you know, like, Newcastle want him. He's a British player. We can definitely pull their pants down considering they've state ownership, we can definitely demand a good fee. Considering they tried to charge us 50 for Sean Longstaff, I dare to say the club are going to, are going to go the other way with that. So look, there's definitely players. I think if we can make about 100 to 120 million in player sales this summer, we'd be doing very well. Mm-hmm. Now, traditionally, we don't do that. But when you look at the couple of players who are touted to leave, we can make near that. And then that can help us FFP-wise to go out and make to a big splash. And then, owner financing can then come into play, in that case. Whereas we can't fully owner finance this summer. Now, the summer after, I believe even January even, we actually may make a splash in January, similar to what Newcastle done. I just think the summer there will be investment, but I do just think January and the summer after we'll see us splash more. Especially, let's say, like, look, if we're in the top 4, let's say, and we're challenging for the Champions League, and like, look, Ten Hag goes to the Qataris and say, like, look, I need a few players. We won't be signing the Vlahovic the world, and Sabitzer on loan. In that case. So, like, look, I do think this summer is massive. This summer is fucking huge in terms of where we're going to go. This next 18 months, I think, is massive. And look, with new ownership coming in, obviously, like, the deadline is 9:00, and like, look, at the end of the day, I don't see any other front runners. Jim Ratcliffe and the Qataris. Now, look, whatever you say about the Qataris coming in, I do think, like, look, the human rights thing is always going to be a sticking point. It's not something I agree with, what they do over there. I think from a sporting point of view, if we just take what happens outside of football out of the equation for the moment, and you look at it from a complete sporting aspect, the Qatari ownership is definitely out of the two people who are going in for the club. The Qataris are definitely in a better position to run Manchester United in a good way. Jim Ratcliffe's coming in and not clearing the debt, which means the club are already at a disadvantage. And for anyone who listened to our conversation with Kieran Maguire last week, we could actually be in more debt with Jim Ratcliffe coming in. And I'm saying this straight out. He's a Man United fan or whatever, but Ineos aren't going to take that debt on for the good of their health. I'm telling you that straight. There's no way that there's going to be more debt involved, and then Ineos are going to say, for the good of their health, right? Manchester United, you've no debt. That's not going to happen. The debt's going to be on us, whether people like to hear that or not. And unfortunately, I do think if Ratcliffe comes in, it mightn't be all sunshine and rainbows. Now, that's not to say if the Qataris come in and they splash money and they do it from a scattergun way, like, let's say, PSG have done to a certain extent. Look, it mightn't be either, but I think we're all in a case now where it's anyone but the Glazers. I don't think, can it get worse than the Glazers? I don't think so.
Someone similar.
Now, Ratcliffe could be similar, but it won't be as bad.
But like American consortiums, you've heard a couple of rumors that there's an American consortium here or whatever. Yeah. Someone similar to them. That's as bad as it gets. I mean, we had this discussion in the group chat a while ago, a few months back, and the only thing I said in terms of who would I prefer was there is no such thing as a perfect owner. As much as I'd love for there to be a perfect owner, there isn't. No matter how much the press want to tout Jim Ratcliffe as the guy, one of the reasons we hate the Glazers is for the debt. Yeah. And we're potentially getting a guy in who might add even more debt.
Scandals as well that the media aren't highlighting at the moment as well. And look, the Qataris do, but so does Jim Ratcliffe. And I think that's the thing. Like, there's like money laundering or something like that. Someone might correct me on. Was it through Team Sky or something, through the cycling and stuff? Yeah. And like the people who he's getting to broker the deal are the same people who brokered the fucking Glazers deal. So at the end of the day, Jim Ratcliffe coming in, I'm telling you, like, I'm saying it just from a sporting point of view, Qatar are probably the best fit from a sporting aspect. And I'm using that term sporting aspect for that reason only. Obviously, there's other stuff that, look, at the end of the day, that's out of our control, that there's beliefs in that country I don't think Manchester United can change. Yeah. There's not. And we're not sitting here and we're excusing that. But, like, I think at the end of the day, if they come in, they're not going to be able to implement them laws on the football club. No, Simple as that. Simple as that. Are they going to come in and bin our women's team? No, they're not. They can't. Are they going to come in and sack all the women in the club? No, they won't. So, like, I do think, like in this case, whoever does come in, there's going to be drama attached to them, whoever it may be. And it's a case of right now, pick your poison. It's literally a case of A or B, exhibit A or exhibit B, what you're picking. And for me right now, from a sporting aspect, I think Qatar probably, from a sporting point of view, would be my preferred bid. Just because I think that if they're looking to get the right people in, make the 92 Foundation, and and try get us back to being run properly, then yes. Look, I'm not going to sit here and champion them as people. I will not do that. I'm not going to sit here and champion them for what they do. I'm not. But what I will say is, from a sporting point of view, they're probably going to be better than Jim Ratcliffe. I think that's looking again. There's going to be a lot of pros and cons to it. Ideally, in an ideal situation, I'd love it if there was a rich Man United fan. If there's a rich Man United fan out there and they didn't have any controversy and they had the money, I'd be like, fuck it, get them in. If David Beckham had loads of money, get David Beckham in. He doesn't have that type of money though. Like there's so many pros and cons with it. There's going to be so many people fighting over it. And I just I just want, either way, I want the Glazers gone. Because if the Glazers stay, that's the worst case scenario, because they're not going to invest in the stadium. They're not going to invest in the training ground. The debt's going to be there. We're going to be still paying interest on that debt, whether you like it or not. That's what's going to happen.
And they're still giving themselves money. They're still taking money.
They take dividends and the lot. I think that's where the problem is. If the Glazers stay, we won't, look, Man United won't go bust. Right, let's get that right. Man United are too big of a club to go bust. But Man United could be in a situation where we're just big club by name, and then after that, you're really scraping the barrel. It could be a case for Man United. Never win a league again. Man United could go down like the AC Milan route where they're fucked.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I think that the problem with this is, whoever does come in now, there's going to be, it's going to divide the fan base whichever way. Like Ratcliffe's going to come in and he said, I'm going to put the Manchester back in Manchester United, but I'm going to leave the debt there, and I'm not interested in renovating the stadium. Then why are you coming in then? And that's the thing. And look, I think we're just going to leave it at that with the ownership talk. Yeah. There's going to be so many shows, I'd say, over these next few weeks that this is going to be a talking point. And I do think, look, wherever it does come in, there's going to be controversy. And I think we just have to see how it plays out and see what these people, whoever does come in, what they do for the club. And I mentioned this on Twitter yesterday, that whoever does come in, they're going to have to communicate with the fans, because one thing the Glazers haven't done in 20 years is open the line of communication with the fans and laid out plans. And anything they've done over a Zoom call, they never implemented. Not one promise was fulfilled. I think that's where United fans just want someone to come in and just rebuild the club. That's not me saying Qataris come in and pump 500 million in this every summer. No. That's not me saying Jim Ratcliffe come in and be a United fan and wear United jersey and we all sing Kumbaya. No, that's not it at all. We just want someone to come in and let the club be run properly. I think that's what most United fans want. But look, it's going to divide opinion. Everyone's going to want what they want, but I think everyone should be respectful and not shitting people's opinions for that. Look, if Julio wants Qatar in, or Jonathan wants Jim Ratcliffe in, or I want Todd Bowley in, let's say, I'm just saying it as an example, they should just respect that,
Back whoever comes in.
Yeah.
Back whoever comes in. And the only people I won't back is the Glazers. That's a fact. And look, whoever comes in, if we win trophies and we don't like the owners, I think at the end of the day, if you don't like, let's say if I don't like Jim Ratcliffe, let's say for all intents and purposes, I don't like Jim Ratcliffe, like the way he's run, for leaving debt there, but we win a trophy, I'm still going to celebrate the trophy, but I still won't agree with the way the club is run. I think that's the way it is. And Trevor says it look, I do think, whoever happens here, I'm not a Qatar supporter, I'm a Man United supporter, so I'm going to support them through the bad and the good. I think that's where it really should be left. But on that, we are going to wrap up, because literally I'm after missing the first couple of minutes of the Ireland match. And look, the bids are
only international football. It's not that big.
International break. I fucking love it. I really do. Stephen Kenny's men, swashbuckling football. But on that, we are gonna leave it there. Do make sure to obviously like and subscribe. Next week we have a different show. On Tuesday, I think it's Tuesday at 7 or 8 o'clock. I'll have to confirm the time, but we are going to do a top 10 best ever United players. So I've Roy Cavagna, the MBE, coming on. He covers like a lot of United history and writes a lot about United. So I've him coming on. James Jackson as well is coming on, and I'm going to try to get Brian on as well. He was on there Saturday. Brian and Julio have a nice, good love-hate relationship.
What did he make of that Mitrovic prediction I made?
Brian literally texted me on WhatsApp, Julio, literally as Mitrovic scored, and texted me and said, "Tell Julio he's a bastard."
The thing is, when you texted me on my stream, I was watching on ITV, I saw the message, and then he scored like a second later. So I was there like, why is he sending me? Oh God! And then Mitrovic scored.
Yeah, you conned us there on Saturday. You really did.
I predicted a 3-1 win as well, though. So
yeah, you did. Yeah, look,
I'll win.
Like with new owners coming in, we take the bad with the good. But yeah, like look, it's at the end of the day, you know, it's all about opinion. So it's all about crack. But yeah, look, we will do our top 10 United list. It's going to be very interesting. So it's going to be all different generations on. So my top 10 list, I dare to say, are going to look different, and I'm probably going to get slagged on the podcast. So do check that out.
I'll be in the chat no matter what.
It'll be a good chat, and I'm going to be educated. I think that's probably going to happen. So yeah, look, if anyone wants to see me get shat on for an hour, tune in on Tuesday. But yeah, and look, we will have another show coming up during the week as well. I have another interview coming out there as well. Not going to reveal until this week goes out. So do make sure to follow us on sportsarmchair _ on Twitter as well. And look, follow the two boys as well on Twitter as well if you haven't already. But until then, guys, thanks very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your week.